What's up, TPE? This is Cody Custer here. I'm excited to make my first video series. I did one earlier as a guest host with Mark Aliotto on a tournament run I did, and I think a $60, like 15K or something like that. But I'm excited to start making videos on my own and hopefully helping you guys learn some stuff about NTTs and just tournaments in general. This series is going to be about approaching final tables and understanding ICM in the sense of how ICM factors into your decisions once you get deep in a tournament, how you have to start like worrying about pay jumps and worry about laddering and worry about all this stuff that makes like final tables a lot different than just playing for chips. Early in the tournaments you just worry about chip EV, worry about what's plus EV for your chip stack, but later on it's not just like about your chips, it's about what's plus EV for your bankroll, what's plus EV for the bottom line, your bottom line. So this PowerPoint here is gonna introduce you to a lot of concepts of playing the bubble, how ICM affects your decisions, and even chopping. And then I'm gonna take some time to actually open up a ICM program and show you some spots and play around with that and show you how ICM works. So let's get started. First I'm going to refer to stack sizes in these slides. I just want to break down like what I'm going to be talking about. When I say big stacks or mid stacks or short stacks, I'm referring to both big blinds in terms of like big stacks are like 50 big blinds is a big stack, but also like the biggest stack at the table or the biggest stack in the tournament that's remaining. These are also like big stacks. And short stacks are also like the shortest stack remaining, but also like any stack that doesn't have a lot of playability or doesn't have a lot of maneuverability in terms of like making moves. So you can see here I have big stack listed as anything that refers not only chip lead but also any stack that has a lot of playability, ability to 4-bet fold. That's like going to be the criteria I use to determine a big stack. If you can 4-bet and then fold to a 5-bet, you probably have a big enough stack to like consider a big stack. Mid stack is the ability to 3-bet fold, and short stacks are either open shoving or 3-bet shoving. But also the shortest stack at the table will be considered a short stack just for the sake of understanding ICM, understanding like final table bubbles, stuff like that. So these are the criteria I'm going to be using. So I mean, it's pretty basic. I mean, this is probably how most people refer to stacks, but there's little like nuances in referring to big stacks, not only as in having a lot of chips, but also like being the biggest stack. Because like in deep structured tournaments, everyone's going to have like a lot of chips to play at the end. But there's only like one like big stack, and then there's a short stack still. Even if they have like 40 big blinds, there's still a short stack. So that's it. So first I want to talk about the final table bubble, and I'm gonna first talk about big stack and how you want to approach a final table bubble as a big stack or as the big stack. So first, one thing a lot of people focus on is being what a lot of people call table captain, or just like being the one in charge of table flow, table dynamics, winning a lot of non-showdown pots. It's like when you have like 10 people left on a 9-handed final table, and then the tables are broken up into like 2 tables of 5 people. On each table, there's usually going to be one person winning majority of the pots, and this is a table captain. Most big stacks, if you're big stack at your table on the final table bubble, you're going to want to be table captain. Sometimes the other stacks may not let you be table captain though, if they're also trying to be aggro, they're trying to win chips, and especially if there's a lot of big stacks at your table or a lot of like not short stacks big blind wise. If they have a lot of big blinds at your table, then it's gonna be really hard to command the table and just like keep raising. But there's a lot of things you can do to be table captain, which I want to talk about. One of the major things is keeping your opponents happy. Like this is something that I think a lot of people struggle with. A lot of people just when they have a big stack on the bubble of a final table, they're just raising every hand, they're 3-betting everybody. I mean, and this will work. You will win chips probably a majority of the time. But you're also going to be pissing off people, which, I mean, you're not really worried about pissing people off in the sense of like, what do you care about what they think? But more so of, if you don't give people some pots, then they're just going to get unhappy and they're going to get restless and they're going to start stealing. And then when you're getting stolen on, you're wondering, are they starting to play back at me? Are they adjusting to my ranges? Are they um, actually thinking about what I'm doing, and they're trying to like just re-steal light here? And then you're gonna get a lot of awkward spots if you're raising every hand, or you're just trying to steal every hand, and you just don't know what your opponents are doing, who's adjusting, who's not adjusting. It gets a lot harder when you start playing every hand. So one thing I like to do is find a happy medium of still playing a lot of pots, still like commanding the table, but also giving some, like, don't always raise your small blind when folded to. Give him a walk once every like 3 times or once every 4 times, just to like keep him happy and make sure he knows that you're not doing any 2 cards. So that way you get respect when you actually raise. Not, well, you're not gonna get a lot of respect, but you're still gonna get more respect, and people are going to start folding to you more, and you'll start winning more chips. I talk about this in actually my first video series with Mark, where I was at the final table bubble, and I was, I think, either second in chips or first in chips at my table, and there was another guy who was a pretty competent player that was also a big stack, and I gave him a couple pots. I didn't really play with him. I like, if I raised, he 3-bet. I didn't try to play back at him too light for a couple reasons. One's like ICM wise, I don't want to get in a huge pot with him for no reason with a light hand or something like that. But also, if you let him win some pots, he may in return let you win pots. He might let you 3-bet him light. He might let you steal some more pots. So you don't want to always just like abuse everybody all the time. There's a certain happy medium. You have to find a balance of not only stealing pots but also folding some and giving some people hands, and just not going crazy. But you could go crazy. I mean, a lot of people will not adjust, especially on like major final table bubbles. People are not going to adjust. People are just playing their hands. They're playing tight. So sometimes it's fine to just raise almost every hand. I also talk about how you pressure low to mid stacks. On the very shortest of stacks, they have a lot less to worry about, because most people are looking at them to bust. Most people are waiting for the shortest stack to bust. They're all like seeing his stack, and they're all trying to just wait for him to get to the final table and then start laddering up and doubling up and stuff like that. So the people you want to pressure are the ones that can make big mistakes in terms of like giving away a lot of equity, and these are like the lowest to mid stacks, the ones that you cover by plenty, and they're waiting for someone shorter than them to bust. So these people are going to be folding a lot. They're going to be careful about getting in the pots with you because you can bust them. They're going to be careful about getting the pots with anybody that can bust them, but especially someone who can afford to bust them, who can afford to like maybe call a little lighter because they don't have much to risk, because they'll still have a nice stack if they lose. So you want to pressure the stacks that are waiting to make the final table. A lot of times short stacks are going to wait to the final table too. Like, but sometimes, especially if there's a noticeable short stack, like if they have like 10 big blinds, and the second short stack is like 20 big blinds, they're not really going to wait as much as if it was like 10 big blinds and then 11 big blinds and then 12 big blinds. Like there's 3 like really short stacks, then they're all going to be like waiting for each other. And this is a great spot for you to just abuse all of them and put pressure on all of them. But if there's one very, very short stack, well, not even just short in terms of big blinds, just like short, obviously short, then it's going to be a lot harder to abuse that person. So focus on the stacks that can make huge mistakes there, which are the second and third shortest stacks. They have a comfortable stack, but they can't really afford to like make a huge mistake and getting in bad, or getting in like even in a coin flip for them. Another thing to talk about when you're playing as big stack on the bubble is the second biggest stack can make a huge ICM mistake versus you, but you can also make mistakes versus them. Obviously, your mistakes are not as great because you won't bust. They can't bust you, but there's still a worry you have to think about, that like I might get crippled here or not. I mean, I'm not saying like play scared of second biggest stack, because you shouldn't be. These are the people that you actually can easily abuse, because they know like if I don't have a hand, I have to like fold. I can't just like play light against this guy because I have a lot of value in my stack right now, and just getting ready to bet to the big stack is not all that helpful to me. So you want to be careful about abusing people, and when I try to use big stacks or stacks that are almost as big as my stack, I try to make sure they're the ones shoving. People are always more hesitant to shove than they are to like just like three bet. If they can three bet and without shoving, they're more likely to make lighter three bets. Obviously, they're more willing to do that because they can still fold and still like they can learn their lesson. Like, okay, I three bet this guy, he didn't fold, so he four bet me, and now I can just fold, get rid of it, and then like go on the next hand. But if they're forced to shove, it's a huge commitment to their tournament life, especially in terms of ICM or in terms of what their stack's worth. If they get it in bad or they get it in light, like they shove like Jack 10 suited and you snap call with queens or something like that, they're in pretty bad shape to stay alive. So what I like to do is make them make the shove. So like if they raise and I three bet, usually I would prefer to three bet if their four bet's going to be a shove. If their four bet's going to be another just a four bet, especially if I'm out of position, then I'm just going to be in a lot of awkward spots. Because then you have to like range them and you have to determine whether you can shove with your hand, whether they're going to call a lot, whether you're going to be happy with them calling, or like there's a lot of factors when you're the one making shove. So if you're a big stack and you're playing another big stack, try to force them to be the one to make the shove. So I'm not saying like make your three bet size humongous to force them to do this. I'm saying it's just a lot easier to play if you make them the ones shoving them, because calling is just in general is a lot easier because you just call if you have a hand. With shoving, you're like, well, do I have fold equity? Do I have value against his range? You have a lot of things to factor in, but when you're calling, it's like, okay, the action is this. I raised, he three bet, whatever. The action is this. He shoved. Do I have equity to call? Do I have pot odds? Do I have ICM odds or whatever? All this. So just making them shove is a great tactic against big stacks. That also, I want to preface this. I want to say that doesn't mean it's the most profitable. Like sometimes shoving on them is the most profitable, or just not like forcing them to shove is the most profitable. But like in terms of being easy, being like making decisions easier, it's definitely much easier to play versus shoves and on final table bubble spots like this. Mid stacks. Laddering. Hold on. Laddering. So, laddering is what a lot of people refer to as folding up the money. Folding, getting pay jumps, making more money, just getting more value out of your stack than what it's probably actually worth. This is something that I don't really advocate too much. I mean, sometimes if there's a lot of crazy players at your table, it's better just to tighten up, let people get into big pots, let people bust each other, and then try to make them more money, and hope for a good hand, hope for a good double up spot, and then take it, and then hope for the best. But on the average final table, you're not going to really be in a spot where laddering is very effective. You're going to often find that like you're going to have some people that are aggro, some people that are tight, some people that are just regular. Like there's going to be a lot of like, it's going to be like an average table where you're gonna want to take some spots. You're going to want to raise. You're going to steal pots. You're not going to want to sit down like hope people bust. Vast majority of final tables and vast majority of final table bubbles are like this. You don't want to just wait. You just don't want to sit around. You want to actually be active. You want to try to gain chips. But that said, I mean, like I said, there is sometimes when you want to fold, like you want to just be tight. You want to wait for people to bust. And mid stacks are usually the stacks that you're going to be doing that with. If you're a big stack, you should be trying. Even if there's some crazy people at your tables, you should still be trying to push your weight around, get some steals in there, get some re-steals in there. And short stacks, a lot of times you're basically waiting for a double spot, your double up spot anyway. So you don't want to. So you're basically as a short stack, you're either laddering or trying to get a double up. I mean, unless you're actually comfortable short stack, where you get like 20 big blinds, then you're not really going to be re-stealing a lot of short stack. You're not going to really be like trying to find easy spots. You're going to be focused on doubling up. But when you're in mid stack, there's a lot of value in understanding when is it the time to start being tight, when is it to let people get their steam out, let big stacks clash, let short stacks get busted out, and just increasing the pay jumps, like getting more money in the bank. Guaranteed money is nice. So laddering is very tricky. It's really hard to just understand. Okay, now's the time for me to just sit back and wait for people. It's something you get better with as you understand not only your opponents but also what you want, and like ICM in general, like what you want out of this tournament, like how much you want to move up the ladder, how much you want to sit back, or how much you you can afford to risk in certain spots, so to speak. And then another key part of being a mid stack is understanding the table captain. A lot of table captains don't really want to be getting in all in pots. They're not trying to like risk chips for the sake of risking chips. I mean, if you're smart, you're not going to just call just because you can afford to. You're going to call when it's a good spot to call. But so with these guys, it's great. They're great to resteal on. They're going to be opening a lot of pots, but they're not really going to be calling you or like trying to play back at you. So if you can like resteal shove on table captains, you're going to find a lot of value in this because they're not just going to call you just because they can, but they also have the widest opening range. So their calling range isn't all that much different than a mid stack would be, but the opening range is a lot different. So there's a lot more fold equity in there, and that's a lot of value you can take for yourself. Like I said earlier, it's easier to range a calling range than it is to range a shoving range, but shoving is more profitable in many more spots. You're during like final tables and final table bubbles, you're gonna notice that shoving is how you get your chips. Calling requires you to have good hands usually. Usually you need either odds to call, you need a good hand to call, and that's more like hand dependent. You're gonna have a lot of ups and downs. You're gonna go into heater of cards and get some good spots to call, but you're also gonna go like be card dead and not get great spots to call. You don't need a great hand to shove with. You just need a great spot to shove with. And majority of pots are going to be just raising and taking down pots, or non-showdown pots, shoving, taking down pots, reshoving, taking down pots. Like these are the pots that majority of people are going to be winning. Calling and winning double ups, or just calling and just winning hands, or just getting a showdown in general is not really something that happens all that often. Final table bubble and final table. So you should be focusing on the raising aspect, the non-showdown aspect, and these are, although it's a lot harder to know when to shove. Like, should I be shoving 6-7 suited here in the small blind? Should I be shoving, reshoving Jack 9 suited over this guy's open? Like, these questions are like a lot harder to answer than it is to say, okay, should I call here? But they're also easier to find. The spots are easier to find. They happen more frequently. So understanding these spots is very good for your bottom line. Okay, let's move on to short stacks. If you're the noticeable short stack, ICM has a lot less an effect on you. If you're noticeable short, like I said this earlier, but if you're the obvious short stack, then ICM, it still has effect on you, but a lot less than other people. Your ICM considerations are going to be a lot closer to chip considerations than other people's will be. So if it folds to you or folds to a big stack in the small blind and he shoves on you, your calling range in the big blind is not really all that much different than it would be for chip EV. Excuse me. So your big blind calling range there is not going to be all that much different. It's going to be it's still different because there's still a chance that someone else busts before you and then you pay jump. But in general, your ranges for ICM and chip EV are going to be a lot closer, which you'll see a lot better when I actually bust that ICMizer and show you some ranges and fiddle around with the ranges and like show you some of the sorry, show you some of the things that ICMizer can do and show you. But that's an important distinction to make, is that your ICM decisions are going to be a lot more in alignment with chip EV, and being plus, if it's plus chip EV, it's probably going to be being better ICM call than if you were a mid stack in that situation. Another thing we'll talk about is losing your fold equity. This is something that a lot of people consider, so it's not something that's like that unknown of a thing to think about. A lot of people like realize that, oh, if I have 3 big blinds here, if I fold under the gun here, and I hit the big blinds, I really don't have any fold equity anymore. So if I shove, I'm getting called. So like I have to get a good hand, and then hopefully I'll get a double up. But there's also reshove fold equity, which it depends on the players. A lot of times you still have, some people will raise fold to 10 big blind stacks. Some people will raise fold to even like 8 big blind, 9 big blind stacks. But like, you shouldn't really be wanting to get below like 12 big blinds. Like, I'm not saying 12 big blinds like panic mode. I'm just saying that if you have a borderline situation and you have like, let's say, King 9 suitor or something, and the guy raises, an aggro player raises, and you have the opportunity to shove, and you think, oh wow, this is borderline, do I shove, do I fold? If going through another orbit will cost you your shoving fold equity, it might be a good spot to shove, just to either keep that fold equity, or even just or to steal a pot, or just be a great spot to shove it because it's going to win you a lot of chips in the long run. And not even just re-stealing, but also maybe it folds you in the button and you have a marginal spot, and it's like 5-handed, and it's just so marginal, but you can still shove and then gain more chips, and then your reshove fold equity might last longer, or your open shoving fold equity might last longer. And these are things to consider, because if you lose your fold equity, you're basically relying on getting good hands, getting good spots. When you have fold equity, I said that wrong. If you lose your fold equity, you're relying on getting good hands, just almost flat out. But if you keep your fold equity, you just need good spots. You don't really need good hands as much as you need a good spot to reshove or a good spot to shove. So keeping your fold equity is something you have to think about. You should try to monitor when you're a short stack on the final table bubble, in the final table, and even just in general, early on in tournaments, you still want to worry about your fold equity. On bubble, if you are the shortest stack, people will be looking to you to bust. Know who will probably call light to try and bust you. This is something that's really hard to understand, like really hard to know. It's really hard to know, is this person going to try to bust me? This person is going to respect my shove, or like, are these people in general just waiting for me to bust? And a lot of times the answer is, well, yes, they're waiting for you to bust because they want to make the final table, they want to get pay jumps. But most people may not be calling you light just to bust you. They also don't want to just double you up, give away double ups. They also don't want to postpone the bubble by like doubling you up, and then the stacks become more flat, and then now they're in an awkward spot where they have to, someone else has to bust, and someone else may not be that short. Maybe now you're up to 20 big blinds, and everyone else is above 20 big blinds, and they just give away a free double up to you. But some people will definitely call you just because you're the short stack and you're shoving light, or not you're shoving light, you're the short stack, and they want to bust you. They want to get the final table bubble over. They want to move the final table and start playing. And usually people that do this are the worst, the bad players. They don't really understand that it's just because your short stack busting them isn't necessarily going to help them. It's not really a great call. Like, good players usually make good calls, regardless of if it's going to bust them or hurt their stack or whatever. Usually they focus on what's my best decision here and just doing it. But bad players will deviate away from good decisions and just try to bust people, and then or try to punish people just for the sake of punishing people. I actually just thought of something that I want to talk about with big stack play. There, this is something you realize more in sit and goes, but there's also it's somewhat applicable to tournaments too. And that is there is value in not busting people. It sounds a little weird, and in tournaments there's a lot less considerations because you're not really final table that often. But there's values in keeping really short stacks around for the sole reason that you can abuse other stacks. Let's say three-handed, and you have one guy that has 5 big blinds and one guy who has 10 big blinds, and you have like 30 big blinds. If a guy with 5 big blinds shoves and you're in the big blind and you have like a marginal spot where like you can probably call, it's probably a fine call, but it's not really like a great call. It's not really like fist pump snapping it in. It might be better just to fold. That way you can still abuse the 10 big blind stack. They're both going to be folding a lot. They're going to both be waiting for the other person to bust. So this is a great spot for you to just keep stealing chips. So letting a small stack stay in the game might be more profitable to you than actually busting them. Even if like ICM wise or TPP wise, it's profitable to actually just call in that spot. So there's something you have to consider. It probably doesn't happen all that often in tournaments. It happens a lot in sit and goes, especially like turbo sit and goes or hyper turbo sit and goes, where keeping the guy in the bubble is actually gets good for you if you're a big stack. But it's something that a lot of people aren't really aware of. A lot of people don't think about. A lot of people actually call really light there in a spot where like you don't really need, like, you're not really at risk to going out next or going out next couple of people. So there's no real point in just calling just really light in spots where you can keep them alive and then abuse other people who have to make ICM fold a lot. Now we're going to talk about ICM actually, and how you should think about ICM while you're at final tables. I just want to say that there's a actual series that was done pretty recently by Murby on the mathematics of MTTs, which in the last 2 parts deal with ICM in the mathematical way. Like he went through all the math behind it, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the math when I actually bring out ICMizer, but right now I'm just talking about the concepts and like how you should view ICM and how you should apply ICM in general at final tables. Not really going into the heavy math, the equation behind it, and all that. But that's a very good series, very good 2 parts there. If you want to watch that, you'll learn a lot about the mathematical side of ICM, which is important, but it's not necessary, I don't think, in order to be able to apply ICM. I'm going to talk about Nash a little bit in these videos, which, if you don't know what Nash Equilibrium is, it's an equilibrium where the players can't really gain anything from deviating from their decision. So in regards to poker, Nash Equilibrium refers to like ranges where against that range, what's your range should be this, and you can't really gain any equity by either calling wider or calling lighter, or calling wider or calling tighter, or shoving wider or shoving tighter. If you know the calling range, there's a certain Nash equilibrium of shoving where it's optimal. So I also want to say that most players don't play close to Nash. This is important, especially in tournaments where a lot of people don't really understand ICM that well. They won't really play that close to Nash. They won't really understand what their ranges should be for calling or shoving. Some people call too wide, some people call too light. Like, you usually can get a pretty good idea. Like, usually the nits will call too light, or call too wide, call too tight, and the loose players will call too wide. Even regs don't really understand ICM. They don't really apply it like perfectly or well at final tables. So there's a lot of edge to pick up if you understand ICM, if you can range people well, and then you can apply Nash and understand what you need to call it with. Like I said, ranging is very, very important in regards to Nash. If you don't know their range, then you can't really determine what your Nash calling range should be. You don't know what range you should be calling with or what range you should be shoving. So being good at ranging people is basically the fundamental key success in all forms of programming. If you can range people, the rest of it's just math. So you can just work out the math, you can brute force it, and then figure out if you should call or not. So, I mean, it's easy to say just learn to range people, but like, there's a few videos out there on TV that I've seen that talk about ranging people, that help you range people. So if you struggle with that, then definitely focus on improving your ability to range people, knowing what people should be. Knowing what people should be is also very important. What people should be shoving here, because if you could default to that if it's good. If it's a good player, like, okay, this guy's good, this guy knows what he's doing. What should he be shoving here? And then I can just use that and maybe tweak it a little bit. Maybe add some hands that I think he might be shoving, or take away hands I don't think he's shoving. And then you can start to understand it better, and then you can make a good prediction of what your range should be. Another thing is, the more players remaining, the less ICM consideration for the shorter stacks. This is mostly for final tables. There's a lot less ICM consideration for the shorter stacks when there's 7 people left than there is for like 4 people left. Because the pay jumps get bigger, even percentage-wise and both dollar-wise, as you get fewer and fewer players left. So, the ICM considerations still exist in all final tables. There's ICM consideration, but it's a lot less of a consideration when there's more players. Like 89 players, it's very small consideration in spots. Because you still need to win chips to win the tournament. Like at that point, you need to gain chips. You need to still build your stack in order to put yourself in a position to win the tournament. Okay, let's go on. And then here's probably the most important thing I think I can probably teach in this PowerPoint at least. That there's different types or degrees of mistakes, and by this I mean shoving too wide or shoving too tight. They're both mistakes, obviously. But in terms of ICM, one of them is usually a better mistake to make. So like if you have a questionable hand, let's say you have Jack 9 offsuit, and it folds you in a small blind or something, and you don't know if you should shove or if you can shove, or folds you on the button, and you don't know if you can shove or you should shove. A lot of times, you should default to the one that's less of a bad mistake to make. It sounds weird, but one of the mistakes is much worse a mistake to make on average than another mistake is. And usually when it comes to shoving too wide is better than not shoving wide enough. Just because on average, like, especially because a lot of people are generally not going to call really wide. So the average player is probably going to call, in my opinion, probably going to call tighter than Nash. The average person doesn't know, like, they can probably call King 7 suited in the big blind, or they can call Queen 9 suited here. So like they'll usually fold hands like that aren't like aces or pairs or like Broadway. So like in general, I think shoving. Well, I will be able to demonstrate this when I actually get ICMizer out, that shoving too wide is usually a better mistake to make than shoving too tight is. And to help think about that, I'm gonna talk about it in a non-ICM way. There's you get Ace King like the very first hand of a tournament, or let's not say Ace King. Ace King's a little. Let's say Ace Queen offsuit, very first hand of a tournament, and it folds to the guy on the button. It's a $10 tournament or something, somewhere where you expect the average person is not that great, and it folds to the guy on the button, and he shoves, and the small blind folds, and you're the big blind with Ace Queen offsuit, and you have like 100 big blinds. Against some people's ranges here, you're going to be behind with Ace Queen. I mean, there's no doubt about it. You're going to be behind. But against some people's ranges, you're going to be so far massively ahead of their range that, in general, you should be calling there, because calling there is less a mistake. Calling there and being wrong is less a mistake than calling or falling there and being wrong. So, I mean, that's a big thing a lot of people don't think about is mistakes aren't all the same. Just because you made a mistake, just because you shouldn't have shoved there, just because you should have folded there, that doesn't mean that it was a bad mistake to make, or that it was, or I mean, just in general, that it's not like you what am I trying to say here? Just because you make a mistake or you do something doesn't mean that the mistake was the same mistake as if you did the other thing and were wrong. If you have an option between two things and you don't really know which one's it, you should always side with the side that has the less chance of being a horrible mistake. And there's usually always one of the two is always usually better. And for shoving, it's usually shoving wide is usually better than shoving tight, and for calling, usually calling tight is better than calling wide. And this will become obvious when I actually bring an ICMizer. The main difference why ICM is a factor ahead, why you have to think about it, is that ICM is just distributed across the table, chips between players. This means if two people get in a hand, they get all in pre-flop. The ICM is gonna go to everybody at the table. Well, EV, expected value ICM is gonna go to everybody at the table. But the expected value in chips are going to only go between those two players. So this is why you need a calling range that plays better against their range in general. So in general, you need much better than +0 chip EV to call, meaning shoving becomes wider. You need to be tighter with your calling range, because for this exact reason that you're not just playing, the ICM isn't just going to become either between you or him. It's going to become between you and him and the rest of the table. So if there's $100 on ICM to be given out, you might get 40 of it, he might get 40 of it, and then the rest of the table gets 20 of it, split up among them. But in chips, if there's 100 chips to be getting out, you two are going to get all the chips. You might be expected to get 60 chips, and he might be expected to get 40 chips. But the chips are going to remain between you two. But in ICM, the EV of ICM, like people busting, helps people around the table. This isn't really consideration when you're not in the money. It's not really consideration. It's a small consideration while you're in the money, but not at the final table. I mean, like, pay jumps are nice, but like, it's not really something you have to worry about all that much. If you're playing a big tournament like maybe the main event, maybe it's even more consideration, because if the pay jumps are a decent amount of money, I mean, it's not like we're talking about like a couple dollars in a $10 tournament. You're talking about like thousands of dollars every pay jump. So it's a little different then, but in general, ICM really only applies to final tables and final table bubbles. And final two tables too. I mean, there's some decent pay jumps there. Like I said earlier, you should try to understand who will ignore ICM and who will tighten out because of it. This is really, really hard to do. I mean, I can't really stress that enough. It's all assumptions, but I mean, poker in general it's all about assuming things. So it's something that you can get better at. You're never gonna be flawless at. You're never gonna really know who is considering ICM, who isn't. I mean, usually the good players will consider ICM, but in tournaments, a lot of the good players only understand ICM in general because they don't experience it enough. You don't really get final tables every day. You don't really get final tables enough to make to know ICM very well. So like people with sit and go backgrounds usually understand ICM a lot better than people without sit and go backgrounds, because ICM is all about. I mean, sit and goes are all about ICM. I mean, it's all sit and goes are. Every decision near the bubble is ICM. So this being able to assume who's going to follow ICM, who's going to ignore ICM. This is a very good trait to have, a very good thing to think about. You want to try to understand, but you're never going to be perfect at it. You're gonna make mistakes. You're going to be like, okay, this guy's going to tighten up, he's going to be fine. And then you're going to shove, he's going to call you with King Deuce offsuit, and you're going to be like, what? That didn't just happen, did it? And then you're disappointing yourself. But like, it's still something you should think about. You should try to realize who's going to be doing ICM, and if people aren't doing ICM, they're doing chip EV. You can just think about the chip EV range, and then you can base your Nash off that for ICM. Like you can still think about ICM even if they aren't, as long as you know their range. If you know their range, there's always an ICM range that you can shove with or you can call with. So like, they don't need to follow. You should always try to follow ICM, but you should think about it. You should be careful about who's going to actually be tightening up, who's going to not worry about ICM too much, and adapt to that. I'm going to talk about chopping a little bit. I think this is part of final tables. A lot of people don't chop. I don't understand that stance of not chopping. You should always see what you can get away with. Some people get away with murder in chops, and I think a lot of people that don't chop just overestimate their value, overestimate or underestimate the variance in tournaments of final tables, and they just put too much value into what they think they can do. I mean, a lot of times they do have a lot of a huge edge over the field, but there's still a lot of variance in tournaments. I mean, you just don't have that many big blinds. There's going to be some coolers, there's going to be stuff like that. So I'm not saying you should chop and take chip chop numbers, take ICM numbers, because you should always try to get more than what you're assigned. I mean, if you value your skill level, over the field, you should try to get more. ICM favors short stacks and chip chop favors big stacks. This is somewhat obvious to a lot of people. Some people it's not obvious to, but if you're on like PokerStars or something, and you're discussing the probability of chopping, and I don't know if PokerStars has it where you can like click a box now, or I know like Full Tilt used to have that, but I don't know. I think Stars used to just run it through like people that came in, you call support or whatever, and Full Tilt had like that actual program inside the client that you can do it, like the chip leader or something does it, or you can assign who does it. But if you're in a spot like in a live tournament or something, or you're in a spot on PokerStars where maybe they don't give the players options to like mess around with the numbers themselves that easily. If you're a big stack, you should try to push people to seeing chip chop numbers. You're going to get a lot better deal. You're going to make a lot more chips off this. I mean, your stack's going to be evaluated a lot higher than it would be at ICM. And if you're a short stack, obviously the reverse is true. You want to try to get people to look at ICM numbers. And I say this in the sense that you want this to happen first. I mean, you can't really make it happen. Just don't agree to a chop if they're trying to like force something else. But like, you should, in order to maximize what you might be able to get away with, you should try to see your chop first and hope that they are satisfied and don't want to see the other numbers. This won't happen. Majority of the time, I think people will try to see both numbers. But if you can get away with it, try to see the numbers that favor you, and try to keep the talk on those numbers, and then maybe try to get more money out of it or whatever. Okay, this is something I need to talk about. Chopping for more than first place. This happens occasionally. You'll see like threads on sites, on forums about it, and one thing I don't like about that is a lot of times you'll see people laugh at the short stacks for letting it happen, or be like how'd you let that happen? How'd you let the big stack chop for more than first place? And I mean, if I was a short stack at a table, I would probably never let it happen. But I understand how it does happen. And the thing is, chops are not things where you concern yourself with what other people are doing. Chops are you getting what you think you deserve, and maybe even more than that. Or you're trying to get the best value for your stack. You're trying to get the most money you can. So chops are individual evaluations. They're not things where you shouldn't really be, and poker in general is like that though. You shouldn't really be concerned about what other people are making, what other people are doing. What people are doing is important, but like what other people are making, what other people are getting out of stuff, it's not really of importance to you. So when you're chopping, you should worry about what your number is. Obviously, you can use other people's numbers to maybe increase your number. Like if you think someone's getting too much, you can probably talk them down. Like, okay, you're getting too much. You're getting more than first place. You should give us some or whatever. And this easily happens a lot. So like that is something you could think about in terms of trying to get more for yourself. But again, it all stems from coming by trying to get as much value for yourself. Don't worry about what value other people are getting. Just focus on getting your value and your money. And like when people do chop from one first place, the reason this happens is because well, first of all, they have a huge stack compared to the rest of the field, but they also the small stacks get good. They if you think about what they got pretty good value. They got more. Usually they get at least two. They get at least a pay jump plus some. So like, if there's 5 people left, the short stacks will usually get between fourth and third, or maybe even above third. Maybe there's 5 people left, and 4 of them are all short, and they all get around third place money. And I don't know if the math works out for this, but maybe then for the chip leader gets above first. Then I don't know. The math might not work out for that. It might not be possible for that to happen. But I mean, I'm saying that's how like things like they get 2 pay jumps out of it. They got a pretty good deal. I mean, like they get scolded or they get like critiqued for it, but like they still got 2 pay jumps out of it. And if they're all like very short, any one of them could easily be the next person out, and then that costs them a decent amount of money. But obviously, if you're a short stack and someone's trying to get more than first place, you should tell them, yo, that doesn't make any sense. You should give us money, and then hopefully it works. But there is a tip that if you want to try to get more than first place, and that is don't wait until there's 3 people left. You're never gonna get more. I'm not gonna say never because it probably has happened and probably will happen again. But it's gonna be really hard to get more than first place money if it's 3 people left. And the reason for this is what I talked about earlier. Is that people want pay jumps. People want guarantee. Like with 3 people left, everybody's gonna want at least second place money. Or because like, what's the point of getting just over third place money? I mean, you're not really gaining anything for yourself. Like you're not really like if you're short stack. Okay, I didn't even get second place money. I'm like, why would I do this? But if there's 4 or 5 people left, then you can give them a pay jump. You can give them maybe a pay jump and a half. And then they'll be like, oh wow, this is good value for me. And then they'll be more willing to give you more money. That's just a tip. I mean, it's going to be really hard. It's going to take some people that don't really care about things in order to get more than first place anyway. But I mean, that's a tip you can use. Here are some tactics that I also thought of that I think will be beneficial to people. Okay, you should play into their stack sizes to get more. Like I said earlier, if someone's trying to get more than first place, or someone's chip shop numbers are more than first place, you should be like, well, that's like obviously, it's obviously not fair. You should give just the small stack some, or give my stack some. Don't worry about other people, but like, and then, or if someone's a short stack, you should like, and they're getting, let's say that there's 5 people left, and they're getting between third and fourth place money. You can probably talk them down to getting closer to fourth place money. You're like, well, you're the very short stack right now. You're like, you should be getting 5th right now, but like, you're getting almost third place money. You should be getting closer to fourth place money. So you should focus on like getting people, like just play into the strengths and the value of their stacks. And that point is made about talking people down. It's hard to talk people down from above a jump to below a jump. Like if their place money is $3,000 and they're guaranteed $3,500, it's easier to talk them down close to $3,000, but you're not gonna be able to get them under $3,000 because that's like a jump to that. Like people like compare. The first thing people do when they see their numbers is compare it to what they would have to get in the tournament to get better than that. I mean, so you can't really make them go below jumps, but it's easier to talk them down closer towards jumps, which is a good way to get value for yourself. Short stacks, you should tell them that they could easily bust next. They can go out in 5th and they'll get nothing. So they should be happy taking 4th place. I mean, this is stuff that like most of these tactics won't work for anybody that actually values their own skill level. But I mean, these are tactics that can work. I've seen work, and I've actually used a couple of these. So you can try these. I'm not like swearing by any of these. I'm not saying this is a quick way to make a couple $1,000 extra a month, or you're gonna still have to like get people at the final table that don't care about their chops. Yeah, to prevent a big stack from getting more than first, you should try to focus on doing ICM. They'll never get more than first doing ICM. That's like impossible, I think. I'm not gonna say it's impossible. They might be able to ICM chops them more than first, but I think it's really, 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 really unlikely. Um, the more people, the easier to get more money from. People won't guarantee, like, this is what I've been trying to reiterate. If you can give people like 2 pay jumps, it's not a lot of money, but it's still pay jumps to them. And when they compare it to like the payouts, it's going to be like, oh wow, I just got 2 pay jumps out of this. This is good value. So the more people left, the easier it is to give out pay jumps without giving out a lot of money. With 3 people left, in order to give out a pay jump, you're going to have to give out a decent amount of money. You can also these last 2 aren't really like things I would swear by at all, but there's something you can play into it, and you're gonna come off a little bit like a douche doing this, but it's something that can work. And I've seen more, especially live, where young kids just verbally abuse like old people into giving them more money, and it's crazy. If people are bleeding chips, then you'd be like, okay, like, sir, you're bleeding a lot of chips. You're just gonna keep losing chips until you're gonna go in 5th place. What? You should be happy taking this amount, which is obviously less than what their value is. Or if they got lucky in a big hand, and be like, you wouldn't even be around, though, or you doubled up because you sucked out. Like, you got very, very lucky in that spot. Like, you should be happy taking 4th place money, whatever. They're stacked for a 3rd place money, whatever. Like, these are things you can do. Like, they're not really gonna work all that often, but they might work. You might get some value out of it. Yeah, that's about. I'm saying I'm an advocate. Don't be an asshole to people. Don't like harass people. Don't tell them they're bad. Don't like. I mean, it's just not really worth it. There was at the WQ final table. I watched it. You know, I can't play on poker stars, but I still watched it. And the whole "I want million" thing. I mean, that guy, the amateur from Russia, I think he was. He got abused in that the chop. I forget if they actually did chop. I think they did chop, but he still gave up like, I forget what it was, like $30,000 or $60,000. It was an absurd amount of money he gave up. But like the way I forget who was doing it. One of the regs or one of the good players was just abusing him and like just trying to get all the money from him. He's like, "Oh, give me $60,000 and give it away to the rest of the table." And it ended up working, but I felt the whole time the guy just come off as a huge asshole. I don't think I would be able to ever do that. Although I guess it got him a few extra $1,000s. I mean, maybe it's smarter to do that. I mean, if that's the style you want to do, I mean, it's fine. It's really easy. It's not. I'm not going to say really easy, but it's a way to get more money. Is just tell people to give, like, just command it, like tell them what happened, like give up money, and then maybe it'll work. I mean, I don't know. Yeah, that's the end of my slideshow. I'm gonna in the next couple of videos, I'm gonna focus on actually bringing out ICMizer, messing around with ranges, maybe getting a couple hands in from the forums, and then trying to show you just not really like solve ICM for you. I'm not gonna teach you, like, at the end of the series, you're not really gonna just know ICM. You're like, oh my god, I know the exact range here because I saw a video. But you're going to understand, like, well, chippy wise, I can probably call here. But I know from the video I have to tighten up a lot. I've tightened up pretty decently. Or maybe like, okay, this is a great spot to abuse. This is a great spot to wait. Or not a great spot to wait. That sounds a little weird. But a great spot to reshove, because he has a lot of things he has to worry about in terms of ICM, in terms of what he's risking here. So I'm gonna bring this up in the next couple of videos. Hopefully you guys enjoy it. Thank you.